are kind of blue. And Sophie London, she's having a breakdown. Apparently, Joel can't handle strong women. Stay tuned as we discuss The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Season 3, Episode 6.
I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz...
Hey everybody, I'm Rachel Goodman, and I'm here with my amazing Maiselous panel.
I love it.
We've got Ashley, who loves her pastrami sandwiches, same as Mrs.
Just
Maisel.
like Midge.
Yeah. And we've got Lauren, who is such a big fan of the show that he named his cat Mrs. Maisel.
The meowvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Meowvelous Mrs.
Gotta
Maisel.
get that in.
Yeah. So we are gearing up. We only have, including this episode, 3 more left until the big finale. What are your thoughts so far? What did you think of 6?
I am loving this season. I feel like every episode is jam-packed full of goodness. There's so many great storylines. It's just really exciting, and it feels like a lot's happening. You know, in other shows where people say it takes a few episodes to get into, it's kind of slow and boring. That is not at all the case with The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, so it's action-packed and really fun.
I wasn't fully on board because I thought everything looked so pretty and camera movements were so silky smooth. It didn't seem like there was any drama, any stakes, but it took a couple episodes to see that they were setting up the things we're seeing now. So I have an appreciation for where we are at this point.
And I'm with both of you guys.
Yeah.
I think that with 6 especially, it was interesting. It kept my attention. The action did seem to dip a little bit, but I think that's because of what they're setting us up for.
Right.
One of the things I want to talk about first, though, even though we didn't get as much action, we did get a lot with Sophie London.
Yeah.
And her Jane Lynch, her acting is amazing. So just watching her play this diva who is comatose and won't talk and just sitting there looking like there's nothing upstairs, it was brilliant.
You were kind of terrified for her, and especially for Susie, because Susie's put so much hard work into this, and she really wants the Broadway show to work out, and then all of a sudden Sophie just clams up. You're like, is she having a breakdown? Is it just one of those actor things where she's kind of just being poised right before she's about to go out and really getting into character? You couldn't read her, and it was so amazing. And then we didn't get to see the rehearsal at all. We just got to see the aftermath where everyone said it was great, but man, it was scary.
I was a little freaked out though. So when we see, first of all, I just want to comment, at this point, we see Gavin again talking to Susie, and I was starting to get this idea that Gavin potentially was interested in Sophie, and at this point it was just a theoretical.
Yeah.
So then, when they go in, they have the performance, they don't show us any of this.
Right.
It was just very brilliant the way they did this, and then when everyone's walking out, at first, the look on their faces, I thought that it was terrible.
Right.
I thought, oh, that's it.
One woman was clasping her chest.
One man was it was like someone had died.
Yeah.
Susie's face was really hard to read too, which was kind of crazy. I guess they were all just taking it in and surprised that it was working as well as it was.
Yeah, exactly. Especially Susie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
there's a lot of comedy elements in this. I mean, in that scene, it was the turn. It was, oh my gosh, what's happening? Oh, it's later on in the day. Wait a minute, everybody's looks horrible. And then the turn, like a comedy joke set up, the turn is, oh no, it was brilliant. I wasn't expecting that.
To surprise you like that and throw exactly the opposite of what you would have expected based on how she was acting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I want to talk about too how they they did lose the theater. And just everything that Susie is doing and did for her to go about getting not just another theater, but the Barrymore. And Julie Andrews was slated to perform there.
Yeah.
And whatever those dudes said, I thought it was hysterical how on the marquee they were, they had Julie Andrews' name and they were finishing up everything. By the time those dudes walked out, it was like that, and they're putting up, Miss Julie. And
yeah. I think it's so cool. The show brings in a lot of real life elements too, so it makes it super relatable. And using the Barrymore Theater, they could have just named it whatever, and made something up. And then the Julie Andrews throwback, too. I thought that was really kind of brilliant and just fun because it really draws the viewers in and makes it more interesting, especially when you're just talking about losing a theater. It's kind of like, okay, well, who really cares about that in the end of the day? But also the sort of gangsters that are working for Susie. It's a lot of comedy, and every single character is funny and brings so much to the screen, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Right. And we're seeing Susie sink or swim. We're basically watching a lesson in how to be a manager over the course of a couple of seasons, whereas in real life, it could take somebody, even an actor, years to hone their craft. So we're watching that in a shortened period of time. Is Susie how is she doing? Is she going to win? Is she going to lose this episode?
Absolutely. Yeah. I just want to mention one more thing before we move on. Gavin and Sophie.
Oh, gosh. That was painful. It sounded painful, but yeah. I mean, it was just so crazy that, we see them complaining about each other nonstop, and she's such a diva, and she seemed like she thought she was so much better than him, even though he's the seasoned actor and the pro, and then all of a sudden they're hooking up, and you're just like, what is happening right now?
In the most, like, they're not even being inconspicuous. They're just out there. Like, it's just very obvious. No respect for the production. Just, hey, here we are.
Well, that's what Sophie wanted.
Yeah.
She wanted to ride the horse. Or no, yeah. And that's right.
You're right.
And then Susie said, ride the horse and see what happens.
Yeah.
And that's what she did.
Yeah, I guess she figured. I guess she decided she was attracted to the horse.
Yes.
All right. So let's move on here. Let's talk about, we got a little bit of a scene with Midge and Joel where Midge wanted Joel to come with the kids to Florida. But this was kind of a reversal. Instead of it being like Vegas where he just jumped, Joel had some pushback, and we're starting to see them, even though they still get along, we're starting to see some of the fighting coming back.
Yeah, I feel like, we're going to see a lot more of this because Joel is home with the kids and now he is the primary parent. It's never been that sort of role. So it's a role reversal for them. And Midge is having a hard time accepting that she is away from the kids. She's not going to the Catskills. She's not going to be able to spend the summer with them. She really wants the kids with her. And I think she's feeling a little bit homesick being away for so long. So it's interesting to see them go through that. And now that she's not going to see the kids at all and he doesn't want to take them to Miami, yeah, she was feeling definitely sad about that. And she's going through a huge life change. But I feel like she knows what she's fighting for and she really wants this career to work and to be successful, which is really admirable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Joel loves her and wants to help her out, but he's got his own business to take care of. And so he's struggling with being a stay-at-home dad or a working dad and a stay-at-home dad and a club builder.
And as much as he says that he is supportive of her doing this, it's interesting that we do see elements throughout the entire show. Well, not just the show, but like especially the season where things slip through and you realize, well, maybe like we kind of like when we see his scene with May, it really comes up, I think, that things would have worked with Midge, but he just doesn't want to be with somebody who's going to go off and have their own ambitions and be in control. It's like he wants to be the man in control, whether he admits it or not. And so we see this whole thing where he gets off the phone with Midge, he gets the call that he might have the alcohol license for the club, but he very quickly realizes that May is the reason why. And we assume that she is. She never admits to it. But when he has that next scene with her, he goes off on her really in an uncalled for manner and just made him look really ignorant. But that's just where he is right now. And he's just, I think that strong females intimidate him.
Don't you guys, this is so interesting though, because we've never seen him outwardly say that he doesn't like strong women or anything. But then it reminded me of season 1 where he was really off put by kind of Midge being this shiny star and him just kind of being this dud in the background. And he said specifically to May, I played second fiddle his whole marriage to Midge, and he doesn't want that to happen again. And it was just so interesting to me. I'm like, wow, now we're finally getting, to the meat of the issue that he had with Midge and maybe why he was straying and infidelity and the whole thing.
And probably, even just to go back and touch on season 1 a little bit, even in the very beginning, if we go back to the first couple of episodes, his dream to be a stand-up comic, he knew, I think, internally that even if Midge was not doing stand-up, Like, I don't think that ever crossed his mind, but I think he just knew that she was the funny one. He ends up admitting that later. So I just think that that did always bother him, and he just wanted to be that star, and that's just, he, not to say that he won't be of something else,
Right.
but I think that that's what it is that he keeps feeling like he's being upstaged by people, and maybe he just went about it the wrong way, because it does come off a little bit sexist the way that he was talking about it.
Definitely.
But I think that really the heat of the issue, the meat of the issue is that he's just somebody who feels like he isn't special enough.
Right. And May being strong as well, I'm curious to see, he's pushed back where he's going to land, if it's going to be the same thing again, or if he's going to kind of learn where he can fit in.
Yeah, for sure. And it's obviously ego. This is the root of most fights, don't you guys find, between couples? Ego takes over, and you're not really, making sense of things or being practical. It's just like, oh, well, she's, encroaching on my territory and basically helping him, which is great, but he doesn't want the help. He wants to do it all on his own, and he's being very stubborn, and just his masculinity, I feel like, is in question, and that's what he doesn't like.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, for the time period, too, it's even worse. Yeah.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we talked a little bit about May and Joel. Let's move on now and talk about Midge's parents, because we are finally, just to kind of, bring us back here, this is right after everything with Lenny. So we see Midge, she's kind of like waking up, and now she has to kind of literally wake up and deal with the fact that her parents are here. And I think what was heartbreaking for me is her mother's resistance to seeing her perform, and her mother's disdain of what she's doing and how outward she is about it.
Yeah, I was. You kind of knew that she didn't like what her daughter was doing, but it was kind of amazing how her father was kind of nervous about what his daughter was going to say, but how much Rose really was trying hard not to admit how much she didn't want to know that her daughter was not going to get married rich, take care of the kids and be a stay-at-home mom like all of the other ladies' daughters were. That was the thing.
Yeah.
I thought this was a really telling moment, too, and it really speaks to the time period. But she would rather tell her friends that Midge was the costume stylist on tour with Shy rather than the opening act, which is obviously so much better, but she just didn't feel comfortable with that. And she does not understand what a comedian is at all. She doesn't understand anything about what Midge is doing, and she's not comfortable, and then she gets wasted, doesn't see the show, and we just see so much unfolding there. I feel like it has a lot to do with her upbringing, Rose's upbringing, and obviously she grew up in a completely different time period as well, but she's definitely struggling with how to make sense of her daughter and her daughter's career choices and life choices, and it's not choices that Rose would have wanted for her or made for herself. So
Right, because Rose grew up in a family where she couldn't sit on the board of her own trust, but that a small child could.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it is understandable to an extent. I feel like I understand her father more than her mother, though. At least, like, the dad is just like, okay, well, I'll watch it. And, like, he's still somewhat being supportive.
He just doesn't want to hear the sex jokes. Don't you find that to be the thing? Like, that's kind of what I'm making sense of him.
And the thing with him is that, okay, if I was a parent, I probably wouldn't want to hear my child making sex jokes either, so I get that part.
That was a flashback for me because I once did a stand-up show out of town near where my parents lived, and they're kind of conservative in at least the comedy vein. And the girl that went up right before me was the dirtiest comic, not a great comic, but just really blue, so blue. And I had my dad and my stepmom there, and just
it's awkward.
It was awkward before for me, and then going up on stage and doing my cute little number, which was pretty clean. And they were thinking of and reminding me of her set rather than my set.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good times.
Yeah, sounds like a great time.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about I feel like the most important part of the episode, which is that when Midge goes up to perform a second time, Shy doesn't show up. She had been out on the boat with him before, and he was kind of in a mood. when she goes to find him this time, he's on the boat, he's all beaten up. He basically implies to her that he hit on a man and then the man beat him up without actually saying it. And I think that's the brilliance of the scene and speaks to the time period. But just their dialogue was fascinating to me. The way that they kind of like fluidly talked around certain things. Not just that, but even where he was staying and how he had to stay at a certain hotel.
Oh my God. Yeah. I feel like there was so much to that conversation. To me, though, I did feel like he brought him back to the boat. I think he said that at one point, right? He said that he brought this man back to the boat. So I was kind of confused on exactly what happened, if the man then changed his mind or if it was more a domestic violence situation. I couldn't really tell.
It was very vague. It was like he didn't want to talk about it.
Right.
He obviously Midge didn't even get it at first.
No.
And I think that he was like, I think that we're supposed to be confused.
I think
But
so
it was
too.
violent because he broke 3 ribs.
Yeah.
Right.
He
It
broke
was
ribs
super
and also,
violent.
yeah.
I know. It's just weird. I kept thinking domestic violence, but then I was like, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe this guy had the wrong idea from the beginning that he took back to the boat and just thought, hey, it's Shy Baldwin. I'm going to go back to the boat with him, and wasn't realizing Shy wanted it to be romantic. So you really don't know what went on behind the scenes. But I do love that Midge, it seems like, is the only one there for him. And you see all these celebrities and they're having these major traumas, and you feel like oftentimes they're probably alone dealing with their personal issues behind the scenes, and she's kind of really there for him, and I love seeing her that way. And he told her his real name, which he's never even told his manager.
Are we going to say it on this show, or are we keeping it a secret too?
Well, I mean, they admitted it was Dwayne, so we can talk about it. So
I didn't know we had decided.
So what I loved about that moment is that not only did he say the name, but the callback. So it was the scene before when they were on the boat together before he had gotten beaten up.
Right.
She said, "Is Shy even your real name?" And then he doesn't answer. And that's the beauty of the show, is that sometimes they just leave all these unanswered questions, which is real. That's the real life is some people might not actually answer that if they don't feel comfortable. And so when we get the callback later on and he just offers up his name as she's helping him, it speaks to how much he cares about her.
Right. And a trust as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And it's like, offering up something that personal. This is clearly a private person. He doesn't like talking about who he is.
Yeah.
And this Shy character is the facade and is his mask. And so he let down his mask in front of her.
Yeah, I thought it was just really cool to watch. And you're right to speak again about what he said about not being able to go to her hotel. It does just bring you back to this time period. And the writers are making it so relevant and so real to really kind of catch us up to speed on what's happening in this time, in this place, in Miami. Clearly, it's the South.
Yeah.
And they were not cool with him staying at the Fontainebleau because he's African American. So it's just so interesting to see all these dynamics. Not only can he not come out as being gay, he can also not come to a hotel, even though he's performing there, to stay there because he's Black. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, and I love how they hinted around the Jim Crow laws, but on top of that, he also alluded to the fact that being gay was hard enough for a white person, but he basically said, without saying it, that being gay was even harder for him because of who he is.
Yes.
And so it just really spoke to that time period and just everything going on.
And, going back to the last episode of the Miami After Dark, so when Hugh Hefner had his Playboy clubs around the country, most white clubs would not allow African-American comedians to play, but he brought in, one of the early ones was, I think Dick Gregory was his name, but Dick Gregory, on Hugh Hefner's passing, thanked him. That was the man who gave him a chance to perform in front of white audiences, and kind of broke that barrier at that time.
Wow.
So we get to see the same thing again with Shy.
And played out here.
Yeah.
Really quickly before we get to our segments, let's just real briefly talk about Imogen, because I feel like we're going to see more of this. But Imogen and Archie. Yeah, it kind of, to me, it came out of the blue that she was that pissed off. I mean, I could see from other episodes that, she was, obviously scared when Midge and Joel were breaking up and that it was going to affect her. But now she just seems really irritated.
It's a sign of the times, though. Don't you feel like there's this overarching theme to the show, which I love, and it's very timely for what's happening in our culture right now. But it's women becoming more mindful that they don't want to just be stuck in the house. That's not their role anymore. They see themselves as doing something much bigger. And she doesn't want him to just leave her with the kids every night. I can relate as a mom. It's like you don't want to be stuck in the house all the time. You want to have other things going on. And that's clearly how she feels. And she feels like he's just being super selfish by going out every night and doing whatever he's doing and spending so much time away from the family. So I love kind of seeing her breaking out of her shell and standing up for herself and speaking up and kind of just telling him like she's not going to sit at home and wait for him anymore. She's done with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What she said.
I just want to add too that I think that with Imogen, it's interesting that we've seen such an evolution in her character, because obviously she wasn't that person who would have said, "Hey, you've got a family, you better come home." She might have been, not to use this word, but like she might have been meeker,
Yes.
a couple years ago, and now she's realizing, no, like that I don't deserve this.
No.
So
Yeah.
and Archie, for his part. We get this whole like fist fight scene at the end because he is checking out other women and he is being, a bit of a jerk. And I think that he is kind of heading toward the cheating side of town.
Didn't you guys... I was so thrown off by his fight with Joel, and Joel got so mad at him for potentially cheating or just talking to another woman. I'm like, this is the pot calling the kettle black,
Because
right?
Joel saw himself in Archie.
And
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think Joel projects a lot.
Yes.
And especially he projects into everything, whether it's seeing other people doing the same thing as him. And he also projects his past relationships into everything that's going on with him now. So he just doesn't seem to know how to look at things separately.
Yeah. He's not introspective, I guess.
No.
He's just totally he calls everyone else out for the exact same stuff he does.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get to our segments. We're going to get into our news first.
AfterBuzz TV News.
Ashley, take it away.
Yes. So I've been reading so much news lately because the show has just come out and we've all been binging it. But I thought this was a really cute article that I found. So Maren Hinkle, she plays Rose, which is the mom. She's Mrs. Weissman on the show. And she said she thinks of Rachel Brosnahan, who's Midge, as her daughter in real life. She only has one child, a son. And she says she loves having Midge and she's learning so much from Rachel herself as an actress, even though she's much older than Rachel is. She feels like Rachel's just so strong and real. And she said, there was a really cool quote. She said, Rachel has strength and a soulful sense of grace, which we really do see come through in the character of Midge. She is so strong and she is so graceful at the same time. She's not overbearing or overpowering. She's still really feminine while showing a lot of strength and grace. And I just thought it was so cute to say that because you feel the love on the show and you want to think of them as a real family because they're such great actors and actresses. And now we're seeing it here in the headlines that this is true in real life. They all do get along. They all really love each other. And everyone, like us, feels like Rachel and Midge are the best thing ever, and they're all in love with her like we are.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Just hearing about that.
I love reading that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you.
Yes.
And let's get to our next segment, which is our Women in Comedy.
So there was a wonderful short little article in the New York Times a couple years ago by Alexa Solowski called The Elegant, Brazen, Brainy, Pioneering Women of Comedy. So I just want to quickly talk about a couple. And quickly add, when I was a kid, there were 2 radio stations in the entire country that played nothing but comedy. And I was lucky enough to grow up in one of those towns. So I grew up with comedians, male and female, of all backgrounds when I was a kid, which was amazing. So many of these stories and these people, I've heard them growing up. So 2 I want to talk about. One is Jean Carroll, who was not only a comic in the 1950s, but also a singer. She kind of bridged between the old vaudeville comedians who would sing and the stand-ups of the day. She had an elegant style, sweetheart grin, and an ultra-fast pattern with routines full of husband jokes, shopping jokes, kid jokes, like that. Somebody else, Phyllis Diller. Oh my God, Phyllis Diller, so crazy. In the mid-50s, she cultivated a stand-up comedy act in where she appeared as a ditzy homemaker. Does that sound like anybody we know named Sophie on the show? On the show? No, not you.
Okay.
Sophie London. But what I didn't know is her outlandish outfits covered up an actual nice figure, but she was playing a character.
I feel like, we learned that last season or something like that, which was so crazy.
Yeah. And so she was another amazing actress who had punchy kind of jokes in her set. And so those are just two. I can't wait to talk about more of them on our next episode.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well, you'll
I
have to
love
stick
it.
around for that.
Yes, I will.
Yeah. Both of you, as a matter of fact.
We'll be here.
Yeah. Let's get to our final segment, our predictions.
Your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
Ashley,
You want me to go first?
Sure, if
Okay.
you'd like to.
I have to say, the biggest, I think, thing that happened in this past episode was with Shy and finding out that he was gay. And I really want to see where this whole thing goes, because you can see he is torn apart and broken up on stage. And that's kind of where we see this episode end. So the next episode, I'm hoping that we see more what happens with him and kind of dive deeper into his issues and everything that's going on. So we'll see, because I feel like that's a really interesting storyline.
I'm seeing where Susie's going, at least with gambling, among everything else. She's going further and further down this gambling trap, and I'm wondering how that's going to affect not only her, but her management of Maisel and her money and Sophie.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of with Ashley. I'm curious where things are going to go now that Midge knows what she knows.
Yeah.
And I was reading about this particular episode, and someone made the argument, and this was not a spoiler, this was just from them watching this, episode 6.
Yeah.
They said that Midge didn't even seem to realize how important it was for her to keep that a secret. And so they were actually, I'm kind of piggybacking off of their prediction that they feel like something bad is going to happen because of that, or because she tells the wrong person,
Yeah.
or just kind of mentions it. So that's what I'm going to leave as my prediction. Ashley, where can everybody find you?
You can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Ashley Fultz, Fultz.
And Lauren?
I'm on Instagram at Lauren Kling, LORENKLING.
And I am on Twitter at Rach Goodman, or on my author Instagram at Rachel Radner Author. If you stick around in maybe like a minute or so, we'll be back to discuss episode 7. Until then, see you next time.
Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.